I just want to document my thoughts on the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. First of all, it strains credulity to believe that that was a mistake by Secret Service. The information that's being put out now is that the shooter was only about 130 yards from where Donald Trump was speaking on stage on a rooftop, which and if it was within the security perimeter, how the hell does a person get there with a rifle? I've learned that Secret Service focus on the 3 Ps: the people, the audience, the crowd, the press, and the protectee. In this case, Donald Trump, who had Secret Service presidential detail. So, bullet point number 1. It's hard to believe that this was simply a Secret Service failure. In order to get the rifle on the rooftop, it would have had to be brought by the first P, one of the people, into a secure area, or number 2, the press, or number 3, the protectee, which would include the Secret Service and the person they're protecting. Or perhaps it was buried and then the person dug it up. It still doesn't make any sense. That close, that perimeter. So the Secret Service, yeah. It's hard to believe that was simply a mistake. Number 2, it keeps running through my head that if the assassination had succeeded and it only missed by about an inch of success, if it had succeeded, where would we be? Well, Donald Trump would be gone. And I think what would happen is the calls for the calls for Joe Biden to step down would intensify because his Secret Service was unable to do its job. And then I think whoever's calling the shots, the deep state, whatever, they would have the people that they feel comfortable with, which I would say would be a Nikki Haley versus a Gavin Newsom. That would be, either one of those candidates would be acceptable to the deep state or whoever's calling the shots. And so those are my first 2 big thoughts. You have the Republican candidate leading in all the polls who's been vilified by the other party. Everybody who supports him has been vilified.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
2 weeks before the assassination attempt, there was a tweet on X on Joe Biden's account, President Biden's account, and it said Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. It said he is a threat to democracy and he is a threat to the United States in every way. 2 weeks ago. So first, when he's elected in 2016, they deny, right, that he won. They denied, then they discredited him, then they accused him and indicted him, impeached him. And then they indicted him 4 times, convicted him, and now they try to assassinate him. We still have 4 months to go before this election. Now, it's interesting that a year ago, Tucker Carlson said that we are speeding toward an assassination of Donald Trump. And he was called a conspiracy theorist. It was the truth. He also said that World War III would happen before there's an election. It is pretty clear that whoever's calling the shots doesn't want an election.
Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans quote a clear and present danger to our democracy.
I don't see. Look, they're going to have to come to grips with something, because if the assassination had succeeded, then their plan moves forward. But since their assassination failed, there's going to be a lot of questions that are answered now. And Joe Biden just gave his comments. He just addressed his fellow Americans from the Oval Office, and it was absolute and utter bullshit. He called him former Trump.
Thankfully, former Trump is not seriously injured.
He said that we have to stand together as a nation. That's what he kept saying. He says our democracy has to have the rule of law, and everybody needs to believe in the rule of law, that we can disagree with each other politically in good faith.
In American democracy, where arguments are made in good faith.
That 2 weeks after he tweets, the president of the United States. Can you imagine the president of the United States tweeting and calling you by name a genuine threat to the nation, a threat to democracy, a threat to America? The
Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
It was like watching President Snow on the Hunger Games address the country.
I thought we'd agreed never to lie to each other.
The propaganda is unbelievable.
Strong, effective leadership. 3 words that could mean the difference between prison and your freedom. I'm Al Saleen, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
So you've got that going. And if I lift my gaze and I look ahead, I know that you've got people who support Donald Trump who are rightfully very angry. And I see this as this is a pivot point. I think that people who were supporting Trump and were having infighting with family members who were calling him, Hitler and everything else.
Well, Hitler was duly elected.
Echoing the hateful rhetoric of Adolf Hitler.
It echoes Hitler.
That's the kind of language Hitler used in Mein Kampf.
I think that those conversations are going to go from a slow boil or to complete separations of families. I mean, when you see the stuff that is being said, it's almost as though there was a contingency narrative just in case the shooter misses 130 yard. If I said feet earlier, it's 130 yard shot, which from an elevated rooftop with a rifle is not that hard of a shot, especially for somebody if they're trained. And we don't know what the situation is. But anyway, it's almost as though they had a contingency narrative, right? Because it was so incredible to watch. It was so unbelievable to see that, of course, Donald Trump staged his own assassination. That's what they're saying. You had many people saying it sounded like a BB gun or paintballs. You have people like, I forget his name, Morgan Freeman, big actors, prominent people, all saying the word staged, a narrative. I mean, it goes on and on. And as soon as Trump stood up with blood on his face and in anger, you could see he was it was incredible. Pointing and holding his fist up and saying, fight, fight, fight. I knew immediately that the narrative would be It's crazy, but it's true. The gaslighting would be, look, he's calling for violence. A man who was shot within seconds before is bleeding on his face, holding his fist up, saying, fight, fight, fight. It's like the entire cult of the left is blame the victim. Well, he wouldn't have got raped if his skirt wasn't so short. I mean, it's like that, if he hadn't been so mouthy, if he hadn't, the gaslighting's off the chain. So the narrative is underway, but I think what might be happening here, and they have 4 months to go for whatever's after assassination attempt. And that's scary. That's scary. But it seems as though right now this might be a point, and I think it will be, actually. I think this will be a point where real whistleblowers who have sort of set their integrity to the side and been a company man or woman so that they could get their pension and retire because they didn't want to, lose all that. I think at this point, there's going to be people who realize that you're either going to lose your future, lose your country, which means lose your family, lose everything, lose your life, perhaps. Not that that's the most important thing, actually. But I think there are going to be some people now who step out and say, okay, this has gone way too far. Here's what's really going on. More than 24 hours after the shooting, now the FBI, by the way, Homeland Security, Presidential Detail, Secret Service falls under Homeland Security, which is separate from the FBI. They have a memo of understanding that if there is a security breach in Secret Service, Homeland Security, Secret Service, they don't get to investigate themselves. A different branch of law enforcement, the FBI. So now the FBI is investigating Joe Biden's Secret Service breach.
I spoke about an ongoing investigation. We do not know the motive of the shooter yet. We don't know his opinions or affiliations. We don't know whether he had help or support or if he communicated with anyone else.
And that has brought nobody confidence. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. Except for those who just, it's anything to win. There are people who are upset he wasn't assassinated, and they're voicing it. The good thing about all this, and there is a good thing about all this. The bad thing is this mass formation psychosis, but the good thing about it is it's being exposed, right? People are classifying themselves in real time. I have thought for more than a dozen years, and I said on the radio that I used to say this, and I didn't like saying it, but it was after Obama had become president, that Democrats hate Republicans more than they love America.
MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies told for profit and power.
Democrats hate Republicans more than they love America. And it was kind of like I was watching Obama, who reminded me of Maximilien Robespierre in the French Revolution, who was against the guillotine as a smooth-talking lawyer until he came to power. And then he was for the guillotine. And more heads rolled and more blood flowed than ever under Maximilien Robespierre. And it reminded me of when Obama became president, and all of a sudden he was for Homeland Security. He was for spying on Americans and all the stuff that goes with it, the secret courts, all of it. How did Democrats, who I stood with during the Bush years, saying that this all violated the rule of law and our rights and all of that. How did they go, my Democrat friends who stood with me when Bush was in office, and now when Obama was in office, they loved Homeland Security. And I used to lay in my bed, look at the walls, and try to figure out how this could happen. And it occurred to me, very much like how Hamas will, put their kids in front of bombs. There'll be peace in the Middle East when Hamas and the Palestinians learn to love their kids more than they hate the Jews. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's very similar. Democrats, things will be better here when Democrats learn to love America more than they hate Republicans. And then it got worse. In 2010, 12, 14, Democrats, it was far worse. They even hated themselves more than they loved America. I mean, nothing was too bad. And it really comes down to that sort of a cult mentality.
I give you my word as a Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are.
And that's where we find ourselves right now. People are vocalizing, saying outright, posting it for posterity, their displeasure that Trump was not actually assassinated yesterday. So I believe we got to live in reality, right? We can't pretend this is not happening. I don't want to play let's pretend with my government and with real life when the stakes are this. Do you? So as they classify themselves in real life, I think it's unraveling. And I think more people are waking up to the shocking horror of it all. And that doesn't mean, and I think things get worse before they get better. In fact, I think things get worse before they get worse.
My fellow Americans, America is an idea, the most powerful idea in the history of the world.
Anyway, I just wanted to sort of put my thoughts down on this. And a lot of people, by the way, when Trump was wrongly indicted 4 times, I went from wishing he wasn't running because he's 78, and I just know that he's never going to be accepted in all of that goes with it. But once they began to attack him the way that they attacked him, deplatforming him was shocking to me. As soon as that happened, I knew what was coming. And I told people, oh, Bernie, it can't happen that fast, that bad. It did. It did. I mean, I could take this all the way back to 2000 and run around, but I'm going to keep going. So, and I think things are going to get worse before they get worse. Now, here's some caution. I believe that now, as Republicans, or as Trump supporters anyway, begin to voice their anger, I think the feds, the FBI, Homeland Security, whoever, I think they are going to use what you say, just like they did to the January 6ers. So be smart. Be smart. Speak out, but be smart. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll document my thoughts more on this as time goes by.